Hello everyone and welcome back to Mind Quest. Today we are going to talk about the power of real conversations. It was recently that I sat down with a few of my friends and I had this heart-touching conversation that really made me reflect. As in, conversations are so important and so underrated, especially in the world of digital media wherein everyone is, sitting down, maybe talking to a camera, mostly chatting, writing down their thoughts. I'm not saying these are not important, but it's very important to understand and actually experience the power of real conversation, which happens in between people, which happens in between families, couples, friends. Very, very essential. So, today, welcome back to Mind Quest. My name is Akshita and I'm a psychologist. Today, we are going to talk about the power of real conversations and how these conversations could help us build bridges in between our relationships rather than fostering distance, which might come due to unwarranted space that comes from misunderstandings and silences. So, I have a few notes with me that I will be referring to as we speak so that I can share with you all the important points that I feel are necessary and required for this video. Studies in psychology tell us that communication is not just an exchange of words, it's about building understanding, safety. Why? Because you share honesty, you share vulnerability, and you feel like you trust the other person enough to show them your real self. And that kind of trust and foundation is the real foundation for a good relationship or a strong relationship, rather. So, without real conversations, which are both ways, so it's a dialogue and not a monologue or a venting, that's not what I'm talking about. So, without real conversations, misunderstandings grow, assumptions take over, and unless we really communicate what we feel to the other person, it is unfair to expect them to understand what you're feeling. Think about that. Like, I wouldn't know what someone in my life is thinking unless they wouldn't be able to communicate it to me. And I'm not talking about the simple things, I'm talking about the deeper things, the emotions that we ourselves sometimes don't know that we're feeling. You know, when it comes up, it's important for us to be able to communicate that in a manner that is very cohesive and very smooth and in a state of flow. But the real conversations that I'm talking about in today's video refer to the ones that two mature individuals who are emotionally intelligent can sit and have across the table or across the sofa or across the room and actually understand what the other person is saying and where they are coming from. So, in my own experience, I've noticed something interesting. When things start to get ruffled up, people generally tend to take space, and that's fine, that's absolutely normal. But sometimes, after that space, it's important to come together and sit down and have that real meaningful conversation. Because without expression, it is really very difficult for another person to gauge what you have understood, what you have reflected, and what you have processed through your own thinking, through your own reflections, and through your own journaling or whichever method you use. While space can cool the fire, it doesn't rebuild the bridge that was probably broken or disturbed through the conversation that you had before this. So, the psychology of real conversations. Why do conversations have such power? There are three main things: emotional regulation, perspective taking, and attachment theory. So, we're going to discuss this one by one. Emotional regulation. When we put our feelings into words, the brain's emotional center, which is the amygdala, starts to calm down because it feels like we are actually releasing, we are actually sharing, and we are actually talking the things that matter to us. So it's very important to start to express your emotions, either to your friends or whoever it is, to the relevant people, and to let them know how you feel about it rather than just keeping it in your mind. Perspective taking. Sometimes, like I said before in the beginning of the video, conversations help us to step into the other person's shoes, to understand what it is that they are feeling. Like, I would never ever imagine what someone was going through unless they told me what they're feeling. So, this is the point where the conversation shifts very strongly from me versus you towards us versus the situation or the problem. Now, finally, attachment theory. Secure relationships are built on open communication. Open communication fairly here just means that we can talk and we can communicate, we can be heard and feel understood. The nervous system feels safe and the conversation feels legit, feels real, and feels authentic. So, steps for how to have a real conversation. We underestimate the importance of these steps. One, wait for the calm. You don't want to rush in and try to have a real conversation when one of the parties is going through an emotional outburst. Let them feel their big feelings, feel their emotions, let them process it, give them time. And when they are ready, and they feel like they want to have the conversation, let's sit down and actually take it at face value and talk about the problem. Use I statements. So instead of saying, you never listen to me, say, I feel unheard or I feel ignored. So you want to shift the perspective at this point from what you feel they are doing to you versus what you feel you are feeling from what is happening rather than what they are doing to you. So you take away the agency from the other person and you say, this is how I feel. Listen more than speak. Real conversations aren't monologues, they are dialogues, which means there has to be a give and take. There has to be an exchange of emotion, there has to be an exchange of verbal communication, and there has to be an exchange of empathetic listening and feeling and talking. End with connection. You may or may not agree. We are different individuals, we have minds of our own, so everything we may not agree on. However, it is important to close with something that is reinforcing the relationship that you two share. I care about us. That's one of the easiest statements that you can throw there. Or you can say something like, even if we disagree, let's make this work. Let's agree to disagree. Let's work on something else. Let's work it out this way. There are so many ways of looking at these problems and solving them. These small shifts turn conversations from battles to bridges. And this is a beautiful transition that I feel every relationship mostly deserves. So, the truth is, real conversations require heartfelt courage. They are not always easy, but they're worth your time and they're worth your vulnerability and your effort. Space can soothe the storm, but conversations can really help to bridge the gaps. So, if this video resonated with you, please let me know down in the comments below. Are you someone who takes space first, or are you the kind of person who wants to talk it out to somebody immediately? Let me know down in the comments.